Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, a couple of days ago, I was speaking with an employee of one of my clients, and we were talking about general job satisfaction, kind of anecdotally. And this employee was saying that they liked the company, they liked their job in general, but one of the things that they were kind of lamenting was that they thought their job was going to be a little bit different than what it is, or what it ended up being. And I kind of dug a little deeper into that because, you know, it would seem weird to me if an employer didn't specifically lay out what the job expectation was or what the job was going to be beforehand. And there wasn't any lack of communication when it came to that. What it was just a general expectation from the employee as far as what they would be doing or how impactful what they would be doing is in relation to the company and the future of the company compared to what their daily life ended up being. And it reminded me of an article that I read many years ago before the recession of 2008, 2009. And it was talking about this first group of millennials that were graduating college. And a lot of them had expectations of these intense brainstorming, whiteboarding sessions in glass offices with, unlimited Starbucks and, powwowing with the CEO about what the next big strategy would be. And what their job ended up being was more of, the daily life of working within that organization and what the actual job description was, which included a lot of menial things, a lot of things that might seem tedious or that weren't necessarily inspiring to them, or that didn't have a tremendous impact on the future of the organization individually. They just kind of added up to being things that were important. And I feel like this is a big thing. I think there are a lot of people out there, not just employees, but leaders, who they hype up this value of work that could be as opposed to the work that is. Mm-hmm. And I think it prevents people from getting engaged. It's like there's this thing they're constantly shooting for, as opposed to just immersing themselves in what the work actually is that they were hired to do. And I'm wondering if you've seen this in your work, or if you feel like there are people who could stand a little bit of a wake up call on what their job is and what they should be doing for their organization on a daily basis, as opposed to just these dream sessions.
Yeah, I think it's good and okay to have aspirations for more. I think it's good to have maybe a picture or a thought around the work that you want to be doing in X amount of years or X amount of time. But I from my experience, especially in retail specifically, but I think also other jobs where you need people to really be able to show up and execute a strategy, I think finding people who really love to do the job as it is and not maybe like would love to do the job that it could be in the future is vitally important to making sure that you can provide them with a work environment and a culture that will bring them joy and they'll have fun and they'll enjoy the work. And B, not, have them feel like, well, I'm just doing this for the short term to eventually have the dream job or the dream career. I think of, like, as an example, let's say, you get hired to work for Tesla, right? And you apply there because one day you want to work for SpaceX. You want to work on Elon's team, and you want to be able to help, make rockets, synchronize in takeoff and landing and change the world and put humans on Mars. And you figure, like, well, if I get a job at Tesla, I I can work there and I can figure out how to get in the team, and then I can like live that life at some point. And through the interview process, leaders many times will love to hear things like that. I have a passion for your company. I believe in what you're doing is right. I just, every bit of anything that we can do here is going to, help the world. And I just have, I'm a fanboy of the company or a fangirl of the company. But the reality is this, just because you have a jacket in a Tesla store and you're able to help somebody pick out the color of the Model S P90 that they want to get, never equals you get to be on Elon Musk's, design team or engineering team. That's just the reality of it, because who Elon gets to pick are the head of the class graduates from an Ivy League school like Stanford, or somebody who's been an engineer for another organization like Google or somewhere else, and they've got years of experience and they're dedicated to the craft, and they have, this capability to show up and do that level of work. It's not a reality. So it can be a pipe dream, but it's never a reality because they get that job. Elon gets to pick the best, quality of candidate and employee and top of the food chain types of engineers to be on his team directly. And it's not going to be, I started part-time or full-time slanging Teslas, and now I'm able to sit down in a board meeting and decide the future of engineering for SpaceX.
I agree with you. That's definitely true. But do you think that when those things happen, when the employee becomes disenfranchised because they thought one thing and ended up being another thing, is that a failure of, is that a lack of self-awareness from the employee standpoint, or is it a leadership failure to not take the passion and the excitement that a person has for a brand and translate it into these things are all important without the money that the retail side of Tesla automobiles takes in? There is no money to launch SpaceX. There's everything kind of feeds into itself. So just because you're not one of the 50 people on Earth who are, a decision maker for a large organization doesn't mean that the work you do every day doesn't have an impact. So, is it which one do you think this falls onto more? A failure of leadership, or just a lack of self-awareness from the employee?
A failure of leadership, because I'm okay with a person or an employee or somebody saying, that's what I want to do one day. Like I'm all for that. Like, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, then like go actually put in the work to position yourself as that potential person to go out and do that job. I think it's a failure of leadership, because I think the tempting part from leadership is you say like, oh, I like this passion. Oh, I like this loyalty to the brand. Oh, because they're passionate about this, then they're going to do well for us. No, because if you're looking to hire somebody who knows how to sell cars, my suggestion is find somebody who loves to sell cars, right? Like
Right.
that would actually be the priority. And the fact that they go like, yeah, and I like Teslas too. Or, I love this type of work. I love the challenge. I'm motivated by closing deals. I'm motivated by bringing people to the brand and then taking their money as they step into our ecosystem. Like that's actually what you want them to do on a daily basis. So if you're a leader saying, well, I'll take the passion and I'll mold it, well, then I guess you better mold it. And how much time is that going to take you? And how much time and effort are you going to spend trying to convince them that they should actually love that job, as opposed to trying to say like, look, I get this isn't what you really want to do, but trust me, if you sell more cars, we'll hire other people to go put those rockets on the moon or on Mars. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't at all. And what a lot of leaders can do is, if they find out that the employee is not a good fit for the role, but they still have a passion for the brand, then it's okay to say that to the employee up front. Hey, just so you know, this is not a stepping stone to what you want to do. If you love the brand, great. We'd love to have you on board. It seems like you can do the job that we're hiring for, but I don't want to give you the false impression that this is the first step on a path to be doing what you want to do. It is merely a step on the path to do this job. And I can map out to you what career options may open up to you in the future if you do this job well, but none of them are going to be outside of the field that we're hiring for. And if the example is the Tesla example, the people who help customers buy Teslas in stores, those aren't engineers. They're salespeople. And that's fine. That's not to there's no hierarchy. The engineers aren't better than the salespeople. They do different jobs. And just because there's continuity of brand doesn't mean that people kind of move from one side of the business to the other. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think like what you were mentioning, the transparency and the honesty about it, I think is definitely necessary, because you're right. Like if they have a passion and they want to do good work, but maybe they're a little bit either misaligned or they don't understand how that actually works. It's just because of ignorance, and ignorance isn't a bad thing. It just means you don't know any better. Like nobody's actually sat down to explain to you how that actually works in regards to getting people into those types of roles. So yeah, I think if there's positive energy, if there's passion, if they really want to come and they want to do great work, and if they have experience or a background or tenure in successfully doing other work that they've done, I'm definitely more apt to start to have the conversation. But to what you said, like, hey, if I'm the general manager or hiring manager of a Tesla store, I would be really, really clear of like let's be clear about this. I hire people that enjoy selling cars, and right, this is the role that I play. This is the job that's available here. This is what I'm looking for. And if they show some of the other traits of things that you feel you can work with, then absolutely, I think having some more discovery, having the conversation, and aligning them with the expectations is absolutely critical. I've had the fortunate opportunity to have leaders be really direct with me on jobs that were open and things that I've applied for or that I've expressed interest with. I remember very clearly making a phone call when there was a position that was opened, and I called the person that I knew that was also one of the hiring decision makers and said, hey, I've seen this post. I'm looking at this role. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. I think this might interest me. Like, tell me more about it. And they were very honest with me, and they were like, look, could you do the job? Probably, right? But based on what I know of you and what your passions are and where you're trying to go with your career and the things that you're trying to do and the things that really bring you joy in the work that you do, you'll hate this job. It may sound good on the surface, but it's just not something that I think you would enjoy. And here's why. And they broke it down for me, and we talked about it. And after a good 30-minute conversation, I thanked them and said, you know what, you're absolutely right.
They broke it down in terms of like how much time would be spent doing this task and this task and this task.
Absolutely, right. And they said, like, you really enjoy the development of people. You really enjoy the idea of empowerment and teaching people how to take risks and make mistakes and things like that. And they said, this job that you're asking about, while it seems cool on the surface, it's basically a checks and balances job of you're just walking in, being the assessor of whether or not people are following a plan and are they accurate to the plan or not. And if they do a good job, you say high five, thank you. You've done every checkbox that I'm supposed to look at. And if they haven't, then you sit down and say, why is this checkbox not done, right? So like they said, what you share a passion for in regards to people, your daily interactions are not that whatsoever, and you're going to struggle trying to find the time to do some of that work because you'll be so caught in the checking boxes of assessment walks that you'll have no joy in this work.
I think one of the things this brings to mind is the importance of being able to connect every position to the mission of the organization, though, because any job can have parts of it that can seem unimportant. Every job has parts that are uninspiring that people don't want to do, and I think this really calls to mind the importance of leaders who can connect those things back to the business. So, to give an example, I mean, we talked about Google earlier. So, maybe 100 people on Earth are writing code to bring fresh water to third world, nations that don't have it, but the person driving around taking pictures with a camera on the roof of the car for the street mapping still feels like they are changing the world or impacting the world positively. I mean, you've been with Apple for a while. Maybe a dozen, 24 people touch an iPhone before it launches, but even every salesperson in the store feels like they're connecting their customers to this ecosystem, and they're excited by it, even though they didn't get to see it any day before the customer gets to. So there are some companies that just have this natural ability to have leaders that connect employees to that mission, even if the tasks might not necessarily be incredibly inspiring in and of themselves on a daily basis. So, what do you think makes that decision one way or another? What do you think it is that leaders need to have to be able to do that, and why do you think some leaders don't have it?
No, I think it's critically important to connect people to the vision, right? I mean, it's one of the things that I talk about in my own leadership platform. Helping people understand the why the organization exists, as you've said many times. That is absolutely critical if you're trying to create a culture and an environment where people are truly going to show up as the best version of themselves. I think you have to do that. I think what I'm speaking about specifically, though, is making sure that they also have a passion for what the day-to-day job is. Like you can have. I'm okay with having more aspiration. I'm okay with wanting more out of your life, or wanting to challenge yourself to learn more of an organization, or some organizations do short experiences or internships when you're an internal employee. You can go out and see maybe the workflow or a job that you might not necessarily qualify for, but you can kind of learn as a beginner and see if that's the life that you want to go down, and maybe potentially get a career down that path. So I think that it's okay. I think as a leader, you have to be able to connect those dots from a vision and a tying to the passion of the company. But I also feel that you never get there if they're not at least somewhat, if not half or more fulfilled in their day-to-day work. If they can't go home at night and feel good about just the job they did without having to pull from, but you know what, okay, so today really sucked, but I know I'm helping the world because I'm doing this job. They still have to find joy in that actual day-to-day job if we're going to get them to a point where they can really start to have a larger impact and develop themselves and continue to bring their best day in and day out.
Or if you just don't even want them to burn out. I mean, that's the worst case scenario, is they burn out, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right. And with that, it is time for this episode's 1 Minute Hack.
The 1 Minute Hack.
For this episode's 1 Minute Hack, I want you to think about the questions that you ask during the interview process as you're bringing on new talent. And the reason why I want you to think about this is because many times we tend to ask questions that are from an interview packet, or they are tell me about a time when, or you're getting to know a potential employee, and you're asking very tactical questions in regards to their system knowledges or their tenure or background. What I'm suggesting is that you ask them questions about how do they find joy in the work of the actual job that you're trying to hire them for. So as an example, if you're hiring an engineer for a team who has to sit down and create designs for a building or 3D rendering or whatever that might look like, a question would be something around so if you were to work here, your day job would be 8 hours of sitting in front of a computer at a desk, looking at 3D CAD drawings and doing design work, and really just engaging with yourself and having minimal social interactions with the rest of the office, except for maybe lunch or at the coffee place. Tell me, what about that really attracts you and makes you and brings you joy in that type of work? And see what their answer is. And if they can find ways to explain themselves in regards to that type of day and why that works well for them and why they love it, then I think you're on the right path. If they struggle with answering a question like that, or they say like, oh, well, yeah, it can be a lonely job, but I mean, I can always find time to connect with people. Or they even push back a little bit on trying to redefine what the actual expectation of the job is. Then I think you're seeing some red flags that will be something that will pop up very, very quickly when all of a sudden they're doing everything except for what you hired them to do.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect 1 minute hack, and I think a lot of leaders out there can really get a lot out of this one, because if you look at the average job posting on LinkedIn or job boards, they tend to have these vague words to describe these jobs to try to make them seem incredibly exciting and engaging and inspiring, no matter who's looking at them. And a lot of them talk about what the job entails in more or less vague terms, in kind of roundabout way. But to actually specifically say this job entails sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day, designing this or doing this. There's a way to describe something that means you can kind of put out a lot of these fires before they happen to begin with. And that, combined with the interview process, you should be able to have a lot of great people working for you, and you can be confident they're excited not just about your brand, but about the work.
Yep, absolutely. I remember one of my first jobs, I was a culinary product adjuster, aka a burger flipper at McDonald's. But hey, it was a sexy job title, so I took it.
Were you excited about flipping burgers?
I enjoyed it, and I was one of the best at it.
There you go.
And with that, it brings us to the end of another episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.